The rainy hike. Sarah and her friend Emma decided to go for a hike in the woods even though it was raining. They packed their jackets and umbrellas and set off down the muddy trail. As they walked, the rain came down harder and harder. It was getting more difficult to see where they were going. The trail became muddier and muddier. "We should turn back soon before it gets too dark," said Emma. But Sarah wanted to go a little further. After 15 more minutes of hiking in the pouring rain, they realized they were lost. All the trees looked the same when everything was wet. They had no idea which way was back to the parking lot. "Let's try this way," said Sarah as she turned left. But no matter how far they walked, the woods didn't look familiar at all. It was starting to get darker too since the thick trees blocked out what was left of the daylight. Sarah and Emma were getting scared. That's when they heard a strange noise in the woods nearby. It sounded like something big was walking around, snapping branches as it moved closer and closer to them. "What is that?" Emma yelled. They both froze, listening intently as the noises got louder and louder. Sarah and Emma stood trembling in the rain, too afraid to move as the noises grew closer. Suddenly, through the dark trees, they thought they saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at them. "Run!" screamed Sarah, grabbing Emma's arm. They took off blindly through the wet forest, branches slapping at their faces. Behind them, they could hear whatever it was crashing after them, getting closer with every second. Emma's foot caught on a thick tree root. She fell with a splash into the mud. "Help!" she cried. Sarah pulled at her arm, but Emma was stuck fast. The glowing eyes were only a few trees away now. In a panic, Sarah yanked with all her might. Finally, Emma's foot popped free just as a huge, shadowy shape emerged from the rain. It was nearly on top of them. Sarah hauled Emma up, and they ran faster than ever. Soon the woods began to look a little familiar. Then suddenly, through the sheets of rain, they saw lights ahead. It was the parking lot. Bursting out of the trees, they collapsed on the ground, out of breath. A moment later, a security truck pulled up. "You girls okay?" "We saw your car and came looking," said the guard. Trembling, Sarah and Emma just nodded. They'd never hike in the rain again after their close brush with what was in those haunted woods. Whatever it was, it's still out there tonight, hunting in the rain. Here's a continuation of the story. Even after getting safely back to their car, Sarah and Emma were too shaken up to drive home right away. They sat in the parking lot with the security truck, sipping hot cocoa the guard provided and recounting their ordeal. The guard radioed for backup just in case the creature was still lurking nearby. Together they combed the edges of the woods with flashlights, but found no signs of whatever had pursued the girls. Just then, loud howls pierced the night, echoing eerily through the rain-lashed trees. "Coyotes," the guard muttered, though he didn't seem convinced. The howls were deeper, more menacing than any coyote pack. Finally feeling ready to leave, Sarah and Emma climbed into their car. But as Sarah turned the key, only clicking sounds emitted from the battery. It was dead. More guards arrived with a jump pack. But even after several attempts, the car refused to start. Now totally dark, the storm pounding worse than ever, they realized spending the night was their only option. The guards escorted the frightened girls to the nearby ranger station cabin. After bolting the doors, they huddled by the fire, listening to the noises outside slowly blend into the rain's roar. Somehow, no one felt much reassurance. Whatever stalked these woods wasn't done with Sarah and Emma yet. As night deepened, the howling grew closer to the cabin. Sarah and Emma held each other tightly by the fire, too scared to sleep. The guards paced restlessly, checking the bolted doors and windows. A crash of thunder shook the cabin as lightning briefly lit the woods. For a moment, through the sheets of rain, a shadowy figure could be seen lurching between the trees. "There!" cried one of the guards, pressing his face to the window. But by the next flash of lightning, nothing was there. Unease gripped them all. Some time later, a knocking started at the cabin door, slow and steady at first, then growing more insistent. The guards aimed their flashlights warily. "Stay back," one whispered to the girls. She slowly turned the knob. The door creaked open to reveal nothing but darkness and rain. Then a howl pierced the night, much too close for comfort. Guns at the ready, they slammed the door shut. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. As pale light finally filtered through the windows, the howling faded into the distance. But had the creature truly left? Or was it still out there, watching, waiting? Sarah and Emma would get no answers on that long, frightening night. All they knew was the woods, and whatever stalked within, had proven far deadlier than any storm. A nightmare they'd never forget. The storm raged outside as we took shelter in the bathroom, hoping it would pass. But an unease had settled over me. Something didn't feel right. Strange noises echoed above, floorboards creaking under some unseen weight. Shadows danced on the walls in the flickering candlelight, setting my nerves on edge. As night fell, the noises grew more disturbing. Thumps and scratches joined the chorus overhead, each sound ratcheting up my anxiety. What was causing the disturbances in the empty rooms above? I tried to assure myself it was just the old house settling, yet an unignorable sense of being watched crept over me. Another creak pierced the silence, closer this time. My heart leapt into my throat. Had something heavy taken a step directly above my bedroom? I strained my ears, but could discern nothing more over the howling winds. Morning brought no relief, only more questions. The doors and windows refused to budge, blocked by debris from the storm. We were trapped with no way to call for help. As supplies dwindled and tensions rose, unseen threats lurked in the darkness beyond our view. Strange incidents piled one upon another, unexplained noises, a venomous snake slithering in, the discovery of my brother's lifeless body in the tub. Were we slowly losing our sanity to the isolation, or was some sinister force at work? My darkest secrets soon spilled out, past rituals I wished to undo. But it was too late. The malevolent entity I had unwittingly summoned had found us, and the nightmare was only beginning. As unseen horrors closed in, I could no longer distinguish reality from hallucination. Our fate was now entwined with the terror that haunted this place, and there would be no escape. The thing that had been scratching above moved with more purpose now, no longer bothering with subtlety. Heavy footfalls echoed through the old walls, zeroing in on our location. We huddled together in the dark bathroom, too afraid to light even a single candle. My mother gripped my arm so tightly it went numb, but I didn't try to pull away. Her touch was the only thing keeping the rising panic at bay. A crash from downstairs shattered the tense silence. Whatever was in the house with us had made it to the first floor. I stifled a sob as splintering wood and animalistic shrieks rose up through the floorboards. It was tearing the house apart in its search. Soon the noises circled closer. Claws scraped against the other side of the bathroom door as something sniffed and pawed at the crack, testing our defenses. My mother prayed under her breath, her whispered pleas barely audible over the monster's scraping. In the flickering light of the phone I'd salvaged, I saw shapes moving behind the frosted glass, twisted, misshapen silhouettes that could only be glimpsed in my peripheral vision before slipping away. They merged and separated as if wrestling just out of sight. A cracking sound announced the hinges giving way. Black tendrils snaked under the door as an unholy chorus of howls shattered the night. This was the end. There would be no rescue. I clutched my mother close as the door splintered apart, revealing the hell that awaited on the threshold. As the door caved inward, the cacophony of inhuman shrieks surrounded us on all sides. Through the flickering glow of my phone flashlight, twisted silhouettes emerged in the doorway, creatures far removed from anything natural. Misshapen, gangly limbs ended in long talons that scraped against the tile. Hollow eye sockets glowed with an eternal hunger as mouths full of needle-like teeth writhed and squirmed in a mockery of human faces. Their bodies seemed barely tethered to this reality, phasing in and out of existence like living nightmares. The lead monster lunged into the room on all fours, the crack of its disjointed limbs echoing off the walls. It shook itself, sending black ichor flying from its matted fur. My mother shoved me behind her, shielding me from their grasping claws. I scrabbled blindly in the dim light, searching for anything that could serve as a weapon against the hellish intruders. My fingers closed around the plunger just as the lead beast lunged. With a cry, I swung it with all my might, catching the creature across its misshapen face. It reeled back with an inhuman howl, flailing limbs knocking aside its brethren. I took the opportunity to shove past, dragging my mother toward the shattered doorway. Behind us, the pack of monsters had recovered, trampling the fallen as they gave chase on crooked legs. Our heavy footsteps echoed down the hall as we fled deeper into the bowels of the haunted house, the creature's awful screams dogging our heels. Somewhere in the flickering shadows ahead, another unearthly wail answered their call, promising more horrors still awaiting in the darkness. We descended deeper into the house's twisting corridors as the shadows closed in, the creature's shrieks growing louder behind us. Taking a chance, I flung open the first door we came across and shoved my mother inside before slamming it shut. Panting, we leaned against the door, listening to the thundering footfalls slowly recede into the distance. Only then did we chance a look around the cramped storage room we found ourselves in. A single, flickering bulb cast the small space in an ominous glow. Dusty jars and rotting furniture were piled high, but what caught my eye was a wooden trapdoor set into the dirt floor. Grasping at our last hope, I heaved it open to reveal a rickety ladder disappearing into blackness. "Go, hurry," I urged my mother, who began her descent without question. I followed close behind, swinging the trapdoor closed above us. We crawled blindly through the tight earthen tunnel, putting as much distance as we could between us and that cursed house. Eventually, a pinprick of light appeared ahead, our salvation. Emerging outside, we collapsed with relief to find the storm had passed. As dawn broke over the surrounding forest, I turned to see the house silhouetted in the distance, dark, decaying, and hopefully trapping those horrors inside for good. My mother and I hiked away without looking back, putting the nightmare of that night behind us at last. But some things, once awakened, can never fully be laid to rest. And in the deepest shadows of that forest, I thought I glimpsed misshapen forms searching for new prey to torment. Our escape had only delayed the inevitable rise of the terrors within that haunted place. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again.
I found my wife's photo album and now I'm tempted to cheat on her. My wife Isabel and I met because of a murder in our freshman year at college. Her dorm had been blocked by the cops because a girl we both knew had been found stabbed 42 times in her bed. The killer has taken her eyes, mouth, nose with him. The strangest thing was that not one person in that crowded dorm heard her scream. I was there for her when the police announced they were trying to search for the killer but had no leads. He struck again a few towns over, exact same MO. And then again, a town over from there. The press began to call him the college butcher. Isabel spent more time at my room after that. It was perfect, too perfect, and I should have been smarter, wiser, but I was young, stupid, and deeply in love. We got married a few years after college, after I had got a job as a software developer, and she had got a job working as a teacher at the local high school. We bought a house in a quiet, safe neighborhood in a quiet, safe town, and for a while, everything seemed so good. For 10 whole years, everything has been good, until 3 weeks ago when I decided to clear out the attic because I could swear I heard something skittering up there when I was getting ready to leave in the morning. Thinking it was mice or rats, I told Isabel in the kitchen that night while she was adding the finishing touches to the bolognese and I was pouring us a couple of glasses of wine. "I think there's something in our attic," I said casually as I passed her the glass of wine. "I'm going to go give it a clear out and see if it's a rat or something." When she said nothing, I looked at her face. It was completely pale, and she was staring at me with something I could not place in her eyes. It wasn't fear, it was something else. "Don't go up there. I'll deal with it." I frowned. "I really think it's something small, and I've been wanting to clean up that place for a while. Let me deal with it." She stared at me then, and a sort of involuntary shudder went up my spine. "Jack, do not go up there. Promise me." I nodded slowly, confused. We respected and loved each other, and I wouldn't want to hurt her in any way, and given how stressed she was, I knew I had to listen to her. But she may as well have dangled a chocolate chip cookie in front of my face and told me not to ever touch it, so I waited until she left for work one morning and went up there. The attic was dark, but we had a light in the middle of the room. Regardless, I had my phone's torch I could rely on. Since ours was an older house, we had actual stairs leading up to the attic as opposed to a ladder, and when I walked to the end of the hallway and opened the door that led to the attic, I swore I heard a creak at the top of the stairs, the kind of creak only a foot can make when it lands on a faulty floorboard. The hair at the back of my neck stood up as though a cold draft had blown into the hall. I squinted into the darkness at the top of the stairs and softly asked, "Hello?" As the moments passed, rationality caught up with me. How stupid was I to think there was something up there? Annoyed at myself, I climbed, grasped my phone and flicked the torch, and with more confidence than I truly possessed, I walked up the stairs, listening to each stair creak as I did. The attic was creepier than I remembered it. It was actually a space I had planned to convert into a game room of sorts, but Isabel had talked me out of it, and honestly over the years I had forgotten how big it was. It was your average attic in many ways. Dusty, wooden floors, a small window at the end of the room overlooking the neighborhood, but it was spacious. Sure, it held all our old junk, but even so, the boxes and the couple of pieces of old furniture took up such little space at the fair end of the room. I remember thinking how nice skylights would be in the sloping ceiling. Why had Isabel, who was so organized and wanted all the rooms in the house to be used, so keen to leave this as it was? A slight unease had started to make its way way around the corners of my mind. As if on autopilot, I walked to the end of the attic where the 5 boxes which contained Isabel's things were lying. Part of me was screaming that this was a massive invasion of her privacy, but I didn't care by that point. I wanted to see what was in there that was making my wife act so strange about this particular room. I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor and pulled the first box to me, opening it up. The first box was just some old clothes that she had kept for sentimental value. When I reached the third box, something in me hesitated. I think a part of me knew that my life was going to change after I opened this box. Carefully, I unsealed the box and looked inside, and a sigh of relief overcame me. It was just framed photographs and a photo album. I smiled and lifted the first one. Isabel and her sisters laughing as children at her 4th birthday. Some were of her parents and others of us. Then something struck me. Why hadn't she put these photos up downstairs? That weird chill was back. The box only held the large brown leather photo album now, and my heart racing. I opened it to its first page. It was a large black and white photo of a small girl on a swing facing away from the camera. That in itself was creepy, but the creepiest thing about the photo was another little girl in a white dress who was standing at the edge of the woods looking at the girl on the swing. It was almost as if she was looking at me through the photo. The next page had the same little girl on the swing playing on the jungle gym, smiling as she swung from the bars. Behind her, the strange little girl stood, watching her every move, her eyes cold, her mouth a thin line. Page after page of this little girl living her life, and the strange girl standing on the edges watching her. As the girl grew up, I recognized her to be Isabel, and the girl watching her looked like her, a darker, angrier version of her. I swallowed hard, watching my wife's doppelganger grow closer, seeing photos of her in my room with the shadow of herself watching her. My vision swam, and I felt sick. Snapping the album shut, I wedged it under my arm and fled the attic, taking the stairs 2 steps at a time down from the attic. As I closed the door and leaned my head against it, I took a slow, shuddering breath. What the fuck was going on? That evening, I waited for my wife to come home at the kitchen table, nursing my strongest whiskey in my hand as she walked in through the kitchen door. "Hi, hon," she greeted me with a kiss, and dumping the shopping bags full of groceries on the table. "How was your day?" I paused and slowly cleared my throat. "I found it, Isabel." She was pulling the milk out and was about to turn to the fridge to stack it when I said this. She frowned, putting the milk down on the table. "What do you mean?" I quietly lifted the album off my lap and put it on the table. "This is why you didn't want me to go into the attic, right?" The words came out harsher than I intended them to. She looked at the album, and her face turns pale as though she has seen a ghost. But when she looks at me, she says, "I've never seen that before in my life," and without another word walks out of the room. I chased after her. "Isabel, who is the girl in this? Look at me when I'm talking to you." I grasped her arm and turned her towards me. She slapped me hard across my face. My wife, who wouldn't even raise her voice at our cat when he scratched her, slapped me. I watched in open-mouthed shock as she stormed up the stairs into our bedroom and slammed the door. The album was still in my hand, the weight of it an omen, and that's when I heard it again. The skittering I had been hearing from the attic, except now it sounded like it was coming from our bedroom. "What the fuck?" I muttered. That's when the scraping started. It sounded like someone was very slowly clawing at the floorboards above me. My heart began to race as I slowly looked at the darkness at the top of the stairs. Why hasn't she switched the lights on when she went up there? "Isabel," I called, my voice hoarse with fear. At first there was nothing, but then I heard it. "Isabel," a high-pitched voice mocked from the darkness. My blood ran cold. I was terrified, but the thought that my wife could be in danger was more overpowering. I ran up the stairs to our bedroom door. I found it wide open with no trace of my wife inside. "Is Isabel?" I asked hesitantly as I looked around the empty bedroom. That's when I felt it, a cold hand grabbing my ankle from under the bed. I screamed and pulled myself out of its grasp, stumbling backwards until I fell against Isabel. She grabbed my hand and dragged me down the stairs. "I told you not to go into the attic," she sobbed as she dragged me to the front door. "Now you've let her out. You've let her into our lives." As we got outside, she rushed to the car. "Hurry up before she finds us." I jumped into the passenger seat without saying a word. "Isabel, what the hell is going on?" She started the car and we zipped out of the driveway. I could see her knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel so hard. She finally spoke, her eyes focused on the road. "She's always been there, always angry. You see, I'm the one who got to live." "What?" I was more confused than ever. "I'm a twin, Jack," she said to me quietly. "I'm the twin that survived while she died in the womb." I looked at her confused. "So she's what?" "She's an evil spirit who wants a chance to live. And ever since I was born, she has been eating away at my life. That album was a way to trap her. Those photos were like talismans. I used to keep her in there. Every single physical piece of evidence she exists. When we were in college and that awful thing happened, I went to a professional. She helped me trap her. And then I opened up the album and let her out," I said softly. She nodded, a resigned sigh escaping her lips. "She wants to be me, you understand? She won't stop until she has absorbed all of me." I was quiet. That's when I saw the movement in the mirror. Turning around, I saw the thing that wanted to be my wife sitting there, grinning at me. I yelled. Isabel slammed on the brakes. We didn't even see that truck coming. We didn't have a chance. When I woke up at hospital later, a policeman was standing next to me looking grim. I blearily tried to get up, but my whole body felt like a bruise, and I fell back onto the bed, breathing hard. Isabel, I whispered. Every part of my body hurt. Where was my wife? Mr. Taylor, the policeman said. I am sorry to inform you that your wife was killed in the accident. The news hit me like a punch in the face. No, I strangled back a sob. No, 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 no. Sir, I am sorry for your loss, but you are going to need to answer some questions for us. The police officer pulled up a file and looked at me carefully. I nodded through the tears running down my face. We would like to know why your DNA has showed up in a string of murder cases. Are you familiar with the case of the college butcher?